Hi everyone! I hope you're all having a great week. Sadly, when I started my video editing this week, I noticed that the first 30 minutes of footage that I had captured were not in focus. So I apologize for this. I did eventually catch my error and I corrected it. So I'm just warning you that the first couple of minutes are going to be a little out of focus, and I'm going to try to speed through this part of the process as much as possible while at the same time leaving you some details so that you can actually see how I did start my painting. Once I added my initial washes of color, I went in with some Van Dyke Brown and I created a little bit of a squiggly line that I'm going to go over a couple of times, and once I'm satisfied with the line, I'm also going to darken it by using some neutral tint, and that's what I'm doing right here. Once I'm done adding the neutral tint, I come in with a water spritzer and I add quite a few spritzes of water. And I'm going to use my hair dryer to move that water and the color. And that's going to create some additional shapes that's going to help me in my intuitive painting process. Once I was done moving the paint to my satisfaction, I let the paper completely dry, and then I came in with a pipette filled with clear water and added some new designs that I then used some paper towel to lift. So you can see the it's like it lifts the paint, not completely, but it creates all these different shapes. And right now I'm just using my fountain pen to go over the different shapes, and this is basically what's guiding my process. The water created some shapes and I'm using a pen to go and trace around those shapes, and then I'm creating some extra shapes as I go along and as I feel I want to add them. I'm gonna speed through the rest of this. It's basically I'm doing the same thing on both of the little pieces of paper, and after this little section here we're gonna get back to a in focus filming, and I'll explain the process a lot slower. Again, I apologize. These things happen, and when they do, I try to really just be compassionate with myself and give myself the grace that I need, because this is part of life. Things happen, and when they do, it's good for us to be flexible. It's very common for me to start my paintings with some colors and just a very vague idea of, I guess, where to go with these colors, and then to just let my process guide me. So as I'm going along, I'm adding the colors, I'm doing different little things to my paint and my paper, and the marks that are being created are what basically end up as the focal point of my painting. So the colors that I'm using in this painting, I have them all listed in the video description below, but they were really the inspiration that started this painting process for me. I really like that light blue at the very top, and I wanted to create something with that green gold that's at the bottom, because I thought those two colors go really well together. And then I wanted to add a little bit of darker value using the Van Dyke Brown and the neutral tint. And you'll see a little bit later as well that I will add some more color to make things pop even more. But for now, I'm just working with my fountain pen, and I'm adding some details that are going to help make that middle section, which is really the focal area in my painting for both panels in this diptych. And the stippling will help to bring attention to this part of the painting. In almost every single work, painting process, intuitive painting process that I work through, there's a stage in the painting process where I call it kind of like the ugly stage. I'm not 100% sure that I'm liking my painting or my artwork at this point in time. So I try to remind myself when I'm going through this part of the painting process that it is just one step in the process and that it's okay for me to feel the way I'm feeling about the painting at this point in time because it's not complete. And if I can just stick with it and keep working through the process and not give up, I will find a way to work through that part of the painting process, and I'll get to a point where I can actually like my painting more. So I'm having those feelings about this painting. I really love the colors that I'm working with. I love the fact that I did something new with, pushing the paint around with the hairdryer and then lifting some of the paint with my pipette and some water. But I'm not sure about the design yet, and I'm looking at it and I'm working through it, and I'm just trying to, you know, silence the voice inside my head that tells me that this is a failure and that I need to stop right now, because I know if I keep going, at some point I am going to find solutions that work for me and that help me fall in love with my painting. So I've just been working on adding these very simple vertical lines, and already I'm starting to like my process, or not my process, but I'm starting to like my painting a lot more. It's starting to come together for me. And so this is encouraging, and I'm just going to keep paying attention to the cues that lead me to making my next few decisions. Not that little voice in my head that says, hey, you should stop because this is not working out so much. That's just my inner critic talking to me and trying to protect me. But I know I can get through this, and I know I can create something that I will like eventually. And already, like I said, just working on creating these little vertical lines that are a very simple little detail, I'm starting to like the painting a whole lot more. And so I encourage you, when you have these moments in your painting process, to also keep going. Maybe in the end you won't like it as much as you hoped you will. But like I've said before, we're always learning as we're painting. And not only are we learning to develop our skills, but we're also learning a bit more about ourselves, our likes and our dislikes, and, the things that sort of encourage us and the things that challenge us. And all of these discoveries that we're making are really important in our development as artists. So at this point, I'm really loving the vertical lines I've created within my focal point, and I've decided that that stippling that looks so nice at the top and bottom of this focal area would look also really nice if I added some stippling around these little shapes that I created within the middle of my focal point. So I'm going to keep adding some of that stippling because it's going to add some added interest in that area. When I was first considering my palette for this painting, I thought that quinacridone rose would be a nice little splash of color that I could add, as it would work as a complementary color to that green, and it would also look really nice against that blue at the very top. To complement these little accents of color I just added, I'm also going to go in with my white pen and I'm going to add some light values of color to create more contrast, especially in the center portion of the painting. So in what I call my focal area, I'm going to add a little bit more white because this will again add contrast and make that area of the painting pop more. I want to add some more of this white in my painting, so I drew a little like line at the very top of my painting using a pencil, and it's not a straight line, it's kind of a bit of a curvy line, if you will, and I'm just adding some vertical lines using my white pen. This is gonna help again bring some cohesiveness into the painting because I already have some of those vertical lines that I created using my fine tip black pen, and at the same time it helps to bring in a little bit more contrast as well. So I am just going to keep working with my white pen until I feel satisfied that I've created as much contrast as I wanted to create. Of course, none of my paintings ever seem complete unless I add a little bit of shimmer. So here's that beautiful star gold that I love so much. I know I want to add some of that gold to the bottom part of my painting, and so I tried adding it in a way that I often do by creating these little lines and little dots that are going through the painting. But as I'm doing it, it's just not really sitting well with me. It just doesn't feel like the right thing to do. So I'm gonna shift things and go over it with a flat brush and just some water. And just making that simple little shift makes me feel way better. It's adding some gold to the bottom part of my painting without being too obvious or too much, I guess is what comes to mind. I think those little lines were a little bit too much detail. And so now I'm just adding a little bit more gold everywhere else, just in little streaks like I did before. Not exactly like I did before, I'm doing it a lot more loosely because my intention is that I'm laying down that gold and then I'm going over it again with my flat brush and just some plain water, and I'm blending that gold into my green gold. And so that bottom part of the painting is going to be shimmery, and it's not going to be overly obvious that there's gold in there, but when it catches the light, it's going to just be resplendent. Is that a word? Am I making things up? It's gonna really look nice is what I'm thinking. Anyway, so without inventing any more words, I'm just gonna say that, yeah, I'm just happy that I decided to do that. And sometimes that's the thing. You just, you do something and you're not 100% sure, and you can always find a way to correct it, whether it's by washing over it with some water and a flat brush like I did in this instance. In another painting I made, another video I made a while ago, I wasn't happy with how much color I had added, so I went in with a little bit of gesso, and it was just watered down gesso, and it helped to sort of mute or blend the paint and make it a little bit more muted so that it wasn't as in your face as it seemed to be to me when I was first adding it. So as I'm doing this, what's happening also is that I'm touching some of that black ink that was at that line in my focal point. And unfortunately, it's not completely waterproof, so it is blending a little bit, but not too much. And I don't mind that too much, but I am gonna come in with some ink and my dotting tool, and I'm gonna fix this. Before moving on to adding the ink, I needed to make sure that the bottom part of my painting was completely dry. Otherwise, the ink would have also bled into the paper. Once I'm done adding these little dots to the bottom line of my focal point, I'll flip the painting around and also do the same thing with the upper line. I'm feeling like my abstract little diptych is finally done, and so I'm ready to remove my tape and move on to showing you some of the details up close. Watch how the gold shimmers in the light when you move it. So it's not overly obvious, like I said, but when it catches the light, it brings a little bit of that shimmer to the painting, and I think it makes that addition of gold just right. It's always good to bring the camera up closer just to capture all the little details that are a lot more subtle and not so visible from a distance. I'm going to try making another video like this one using some of the same techniques with my camera in focus so that you can hopefully have a chance to better capture all the details that I included in my painting. Until then, however, don't hesitate to ask any questions if you do need some clarification on some parts of my process. Thank you again for making the time to join me on this journey. I hope you have a wonderful week and happy creating!